Hello class, today I'm going to be discussing the primary deficiencies of B and T cells. To begin, I will talk about T cells and the specific role of T cells. T cells, also called T lymphocytes, are a type of white blood cell. They are developed from the stem cells within the bone marrow and they mature within the thymus, where they also multiply. Then they are sent off to tissues or to the circulating blood or to the lymphatic system. There are two main classes of T cells, the helper T cells and the killer T cells. Helper T cells are very important cells within the adaptive immune system. They help the activation of B cells to discharge antibodies and macrophages that terminate microbes that were ingested. These cells also activate cytotoxic T cells, or killer T cells, to eliminate the target cells that are infected. Helper T cells function only when they are activated to be effector cells. They are considered to coordinate other cells. These cells stimulate killer T cells and B cells to make the immune response. Killer T cells kill off certain cells, which include foreign cells and infected cells. They can attack and eliminate cells that display their recognized target. Antigens are a specific molecule to help the T cells differentiate between infected cells and healthy cells. Cells that have self-antigens on their membrane surface are known as the healthy cells. T cells are very helpful in identifying viruses and microorganisms by the antigens present on their surface. They are situated inside the lymph nodes, that is, the lymphoid sheath of the spleen and the cortex of the lymph nodes. They have the T cell receptor, also known as the TCR. They have a long lifespan and they occupy 80% of the total lymphocytes present in the blood. Cytotoxic T cells, helper T cells, and suppressor T cells are the main types of T cells that are involved in the cell-mediated immunity. T cells secrete lymphokines as they lack surface antigens. They identify viral antigens outside of the infected cells. T cells instantly move to the infected site and also have the inhibitory effect on the immune system. T cells work against the tumor cells or any transplanted organ, protect and fight against pathogens like fungi, viruses, which enter the body, and this is a reason why people with T cell deficiencies are more prone to viral infections. There are two types of T cells, the alpha beta and the gamma delta T cells. And the T cells are differentiated by the presence of glycoproteins, CD4 and CD8. CD8 cells are known as the cytotoxic T cells, or the killer T cells, as I mentioned previously, which kill their target cells by releasing the cytotoxic granules into the cell to be killed. CD4 T helper cells become activated when the immune system, which releases the cytokines to produce antibodies by helping the B cells. With this, the CD4 cells activate and regulate the adaptive immune response. Next, I will be discussing B cells and the specific role of B cells. B lymphocytes, also known as B cells, are a type of white blood cell. The bone marrow is responsible for producing B cells from the hematopoietic stem cells, and they mature in the bone marrow as well, but only in mammals, while in birds it is in the bursa of the fabricus. B cells can recognize the antigen, which is the foreign body that produces antibodies against it. B cells originate in bone marrow and are situated outside of the lymph nodes, that is in the respiratory tract, spleen, gut, germinal centers, and the medullary and subcapsular cords of the lymph nodes. Young B cells, known as naive B cells, are usually found in the lymph node or the spleen. These B cells have not ever been exposed to an antigen and at this time only express the immunoglobulin M isotype. B lymphocytes are responsible for the antibody-mediated immunity factor of the adaptive immune system. Their main job is the excretion of antibodies. The B cells coated with B cell receptors, or BCRs for short. Each BCR is formed of the surface of immunoglobulins made of 6 peptides. 2 are light chains and 2 are heavy chains, which compose 2 antigen binding zones. The other 2 peptide chains are what fasten the B cell receptor to the membrane. The result of the peptides are 2 antigen binding sites. The surface antigens are unique to each B cell, and each BCR only distinguishes one epitope of the particular antigen. They have a B cell receptor, also known as the BCR, that I mentioned previously. They have a short lifespan and they contain surface antigens. B cells occupy the remaining 20% of the total lymphocytes present in the blood, while the T cells are the other 80%. Memory cells and plasma cells are the two types of B cells. Unlike TCRs, BCRs can connect with epitopes that are found on the surface of the pathogen or the epitopes that are found on free antigens. Once the B cell is stimulated by an antigenic epitope, it becomes activated and the cell divides, multiplies, and releases antibodies, which have the identical binding sites to the original B cell. There are some B cells that, after activation, undergo differentiation, which is a process that changes the B cell into different types of cells, such as the plasma cells I mentioned earlier. B cells also can go through the process of clonal expansion, in which daughter cells are produced from the parent cell. Although with each division, there may be mutations that occur that progressively advance the binding likeness to antigens. The main role of B cells is that they are involved in humoral-mediated immunity or antibody-mediated immunity. B cells identifies the antigens on the surface of a virus and bacteria as the surface antigens. They fight and protect the body from the bacteria and viruses that enter the bloodstream, and for this reason, people with B cell deficiencies are prone to bacterial infection. In short, B cells produce antibodies that fight off antigens, work as antigen-presenting cells, or APCs, and after contact and activation with an antigen, they become memory cells. Lastly, I will be discussing the deficiencies of T cell and B cells and what causes them, in addition to why individuals with B cell deficiencies are more prone to bacterial infections, as I mentioned earlier, and why people with T cell deficiencies are more prone to viral infections. Lastly, I'll finish off with an example of each type of disease associated with B cell deficiency and T cell deficiencies. Primary B cell disorders include defective antibody production resulting from molecular defects inherent to B cells, immune dysregulation, impaired function, and a breakdown of interaction between the B cells and T cells. These defects may reveal as autoimmunity, an immune deficiency, or allergies. B cell humoral immune deficiencies are conditions which cause impairment of humoral immunity, which can lead to immunodeficiency, and it can be mediated by an insufficient number or function of B cells, the plasma cells they differentiate into, or the antibodies secreted by the plasma cells. While primary T cell disorders are immunodeficiencies that are considered genetic defects with the development of T cells. T cell immunodeficiency is rare and is typically present during early childhood. There are several primary immunodeficiencies that have been linked to the weakened production and performance of T cells. T cell deficiency is a deficiency of the T cells caused by the decreased function of individual T cells and causes an immunodeficiency of cell-mediated immunity. T cells and B cells are the major components of adaptive immune response. Mainly, the T cells are involved in cell-mediated immunity, and the B cells are responsible for humoral immunity. Deficiency of T cells leads to viral infections like influenza, immunodeficiency disorders, etc. Deficiency of B cells mainly leads to the decrease of one or more isotopes of the immunoglobulins, which increases a person's susceptibility to bacterial infections like skin infections, conjunctivitis, sinopulmonary infections, etc. Diseases associated with the B cells immune deficiency are viral hepatitis and myeloma, while diseases associated with the T cells immune deficiencies are Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, AIDS, and several other nutritional disorders. And that is it for today, you guys. Thank you so much.